Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Have you ever looked up at the sky and seen a rocket flying high? Did you wonder, how do they even build something that big and powerful? Rockets are not like cars or planes, they're much more complex. They face extreme heat, super fast speeds, and massive pressure when they launch into space. So how do engineers actually build them from the ground up? In today's video, we'll break it all down in a simple way. From the first drawing to the final countdown.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We'll explore how rockets are really made. And trust me, once you see all the work behind it, you'll be amazed. So if you're ready to discover the world of rockets, stick around. And if you enjoy learning cool stuff like this, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more exciting space stories. It all starts with a plan. Before building a rocket, there's a lot of important planning that needs to happen. Scientists and engineers sit down and ask some really big questions. They need to know, what is the rocket's mission? Is it going to space, carrying a satellite, or maybe even landing on Mars? They also figure out how big the rocket needs to be, how much it will weigh, and what materials are the best to use. They don't just guess or hope it works, they use computers to design every little part first. This early step is called the design phase. During this phase, they make a model of the rocket on the computer and run simulations, which are like practice launches, to see if the design will work in real life. If something looks wrong, they can fix it on the computer before anyone even touches real metal. This saves a lot of time, money, and keeps everyone much safer. Choosing the right materials. Rockets have to face extreme heat, speed, and pressure, so you can't just build them with normal materials. You need stuff that is super strong, but also super light. Some of the most common materials used in rockets are aluminum, which is light and strong, titanium, even stronger but very expensive, carbon fiber, which is very light and strong, and special heat-resistant metals for parts that deal with fire and burning fuel. The main goal is to make the rocket as light as possible while still being strong enough to survive the powerful forces during launch. Here's a fun fact. Every extra kilogram on a rocket costs thousands of dollars to send into space. That's why keeping the rocket lightweight is so important. Building the rocket engines. The engine is like the heart of the rocket. Without it, the rocket simply can't go anywhere. Building rocket engines is actually one of the hardest parts of the whole process. First, engineers design the engine to burn fuel and create a huge amount of thrust. That's the strong force that pushes the rocket up into the sky. They use either liquid fuel, like liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen, or solid fuel, which is a special kind of explosive material. Building these engines has to be done very carefully because even the smallest mistake could cause the rocket to explode. Every part of the engine is hand-checked by experts, tested on the ground many times, and scanned for tiny cracks or problems. Only after passing all these tough tests is the engine finally ready to be attached to the rocket. Making the rocket body. The rocket's body is called the fuselage, and it's basically a giant tube made from lightweight but strong materials. To build it, engineers start with large sheets of aluminum or carbon fiber. These sheets are cut into the right shapes, then rolled into a cylinder to form the body. After that, the pieces are welded or glued together very carefully to make sure everything fits perfectly. Sometimes they even add extra layers to make the body stronger and more stable. Inside the fuselage, they also build huge fuel tanks. These tanks have to be very strong and leak-proof because they hold the rocket's fuel. All of this work usually happens in big factories, where robot arms and special machines help do the job with perfect accuracy. Assembling the rocket stages. Most rockets are not built as one big piece. Instead, they are made in stages, usually 2 or 3 parts stacked on top of each other. Each stage has a special job. The first stage is the bottom part, and it gives the rocket the most power during liftoff. Once its fuel is all used up, it drops off, and then the second stage takes over to keep the rocket going higher. Sometimes there's even a third stage for missions that go really far, like into deep space. Each stage has its own engine and fuel tanks, and they are all built and tested separately. After that, they are carefully put together to make one complete rocket. During the launch, when one stage finishes its job, it falls away, and the next stage keeps pushing the rocket higher. This method helps save fuel and makes the rocket more efficient. Adding the payload. The payload is what the rocket is carrying into space. It could be a satellite, a robot rover, supplies for astronauts, or even people. The payload sits at the very top of the rocket inside a special part called the payload fairing, which is like a protective nose cone. The fairing's job is to protect the payload during the powerful launch and the early part of the journey through the atmosphere. Once the rocket gets high enough and is safely out of the thickest part of the atmosphere, the fairing splits open and falls away, leaving the payload ready to continue its trip into space. Building the launch systems. Besides building the rocket itself, there's a lot of other work that needs to be done for a successful launch. This includes building the launch pad, which is where the rocket stands before liftoff. There's also a support tower that holds the rocket upright and keeps it stable. Then there are fueling systems that carefully fill the rocket with fuel right before launch. And don't forget the computer systems that control the countdown and make sure everything happens at exactly the right time. All of these systems have to be tested and ready long before the rocket even arrives at the launch site. Testing, and more testing. Before a rocket can launch, it has to go through tons of tests, sometimes hundreds of them. These tests make sure everything works perfectly. For example, they do engine tests to check if the engine runs smoothly without actually launching. Pressure tests make sure the fuel tanks can handle the pressure. Vibration tests ensure the rocket won't break apart during the launch shake. Heat tests check if the rocket can survive the extreme heat of re-entry, and they do launch rehearsals to practice the countdown and launch steps. Testing is expensive and takes months, but it's super important because even a tiny mistake could cause the rocket to fail, costing millions or even billions of dollars. Transporting the rocket to the launch site. Rockets are usually built in a huge factory, but they need to be launched from special places like the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Moving a rocket to its launch site is a massive task. They transport the rocket in different ways, sometimes by special trucks that drive super slowly to make sure it stays safe, or by ship over the ocean, or even by airplane if the rocket is small enough. The rocket is always kept inside a giant cover to protect it from damage during the journey. Once it arrives at the launch site, it's carefully lifted upright onto the launch pad using powerful cranes and machines. Every step of this process is done with extreme care to make sure the rocket is ready for launch. Final checks before launch. Once the rocket is on the launch pad, the team does a bunch of final checks to make sure everything is ready. They check the engines to make sure they're working properly, test the fuel lines to ensure there are no leaks, and make sure the computer systems are all set to control the launch. They also confirm that the weather conditions are good for a safe takeoff. The team goes through a long pre-launch checklist to make sure nothing is missed. Nothing is left to chance. If anything doesn't look right or if something seems off, the launch is delayed. The number one rule is always safety, no matter what. What happens after launch? Even after the rocket has launched, the job is far from over. Tracking stations on Earth keep a close eye on the rocket's path, making sure everything is going as planned. Mission Control monitors every signal from the rocket to ensure everything is working correctly. If the rocket is carrying satellites or spacecraft, they will separate from the rocket and continue on their journey to their final destinations. If the rocket was carrying astronauts, teams on Earth work hard to guide them safely to their new home, whether it's the International Space Station or even farther into space. The mission isn't complete until everything is in the right place. Building a rocket isn't just about putting some metal parts together and setting them on fire. It takes years of planning, lots of testing, special materials, and big teams of smart people working side by side. From the tiniest screw to the biggest engine, every single part is super important. And even after all that, launching a rocket is still a brave and risky adventure. But because of all this hard work, we can explore space, send satellites that help us stay connected, and even dream about living on Mars someday. Did you ever think it took this much effort to build a rocket? What part of the rocket building process amazed you the most? Thanks for joining me on this amazing journey today. If you had fun learning about rockets, make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more awesome space adventures. See you next time, and remember, keep dreaming big and reaching for the stars.